Here it is. Routakit HD, less than 2 years old. Put out to pasture. Want to touch base on a couple of reasons why I've gone to a different machine and kind of abandoned this one. One is the Z-axis. They sit there and they advertise, we couldn't make it any more rigid if we tried. Well, perhaps you should try. You probably won't be able to see it in the video, but this has a fair amount of play. It's just steel wheels on some linear V-rails. It's nothing compared to a linear guide, which is what they should have done on here. And it would have been fairly simple to do it. I'm not sure why they didn't. All right, so the Z-axis, other than that, it's not too bad. Again, you got nylon wheels on aluminum rails down here. So anytime there's a little chunk on the rail, it bumps over it, and you get a little variation from that. So that's not the greatest design. It's not the end of the world, but it's not the greatest. Of course, here's some homemade brackets I had to build because they never sent me my parts. Let's see, what else? On the Z-axis, that's about it. Oh yeah, it hangs down such that you don't have truly 8 inches of travel. It's only about, 7 inches or 6 inches off the table. So that's kind of a stupid thing where you have 8 inches of travel, but your gantry won't clear it. All right, coming over to the gantry. I don't really care for this design other than I don't know that I would say it's a mess up, but basically you end up hitting your dust shoe on this Y rail before it hits anything else. So getting a full 48 inches out of this is tough with a dust boot on it. And there's no X direction bracing on these plates. So they're just at the mercy of, a 4-inch riser with no sort of bracing on the outside of it. The gantry itself should provide some structure, but doesn't have anything that continues down to where the wheels are. Biggest problem, number one problem with this machine, it's a belt drive with 0 gear reduction. So every step is worth, I can't remember, 0.02 of an inch or something like that. So if you lose a step, losing a step is a big deal, even if it's just one. The next biggest problem is these motors, while they're pretty strong, with no gear reduction, can't overpower the cutting forces that a 3 kilowatt router head or spindle can give you. So it will sit there and it'll push it and you'll lose some steps and you'll never know it. The next problem, these belts stretch, and it's a problem that when you break the reinforcing fibers inside of them, they will never get tight again. It just continues to stretch. So your belts don't last very long, especially if you're doing, pretty hardcore cutting. In wood, nothing serious, but in wood, if you're cutting at high feed rates and stuff, it should be able to do. That's why you buy an HD model. It's not going to last. It's going to rip your belts up. And I've tried steel cord belts. I've tried the fiberglass reinforced ones like these. No avail. I think there's a third set of belts on here. And you can see, in fact, I had a quick job I needed to do before I shut this thing down, so I just moved the belt past where the stretched out part was and put my belt clip there. And you can tell I'm using different belt clips. I'm sort of modifying the ones they provide in the kit because those were horrible. Again, homemade parts because they didn't send me my chain track rails. And then one of the biggest design issues is for some reason the Y-axis is up here free floating. They claim it so you can put stuff underneath it, but you can see it have to be very thin to fit between your spoil board and the bottom of the carriage. And again, on the ends, there's no sort of 90-degree direction bracing, so this thing has some slop to it when it starts and stops. You see it shaking a lot. I've built a steel base for it, so that minimizes it, but you're still going to have some flex in those end plates. Again, for this much money, this is not a machine I would invest in, just strictly based on the design features of it. The customer service and the support is a whole nother story, and I wouldn't buy a machine if it was the best machine in the world from these guys because their support and their understanding of it is so poor. That's about it for all the things I can think of offhand. I'm going to try to turn this thing into a laser, something that doesn't have any high cutting forces. We'll see how that works out. But that's it. So again, if you're thinking about anything from Routakit, I would seriously consider it. I think they're probably going out of business now, hopefully. So look at something better. For a little bit more money, you can get an Avid CNC, which looks, you know, basically on par with some of the Cam Masters and professional machines. This is advertised as a semi-professional machine, and it is, I wouldn't even say it would be an entry-level machine. It's expensive. It doesn't do what it's supposed to do, and when you have an issue with it, they won't back it up. So, all right, buyer beware if you see a Routakit out there. Now, if you do buy a machine used, you can certainly convert it into a better machine, you know, changing over to linear rails and things like that. But as it sits, I wouldn't buy one unless I was using it to draw on pieces of paper with a marker. That's about as tough as this machine is.